What is up, my dudes? My name is Rane and welcome back to Making Metal in FL Studio, where in the last episode we wrote some guitar riffs for our song, and this time we will be focusing on bass, so let's go! Now, before we jump into how to write bass, let's make sure that all of us even have a bass, because when I started making music I certainly did not have one. So let's talk about what alternatives you have if you don't have an acoustic bass. Actually, I'm just going to put a link in the description where someone talks you through about 21 free bass VSTs, and you can just pick whichever one you like and sounds the best to you. And once you have your plugin installed, all you do is you click on this little arrow right here and click on refresh plugin list. If you don't see your plugin yet, go to Options and then to Manage Plugins. And if the folder that your plugin is installed in isn't listed here, just click on this little plus and look for the folder where your VST is put in. If you still don't see it, click on this little plus icon and then on More Plugins, and then you should be able to find all the plugins that FL Studio could find. I'm going to be using ABPL, which is Ample Bass P2 Lite, and yeah, I find that this bass sounds pretty good. If you tune the first string down, you can even go as low as drop D, which is pretty damn good. So are we using this bass? Sadly, I couldn't find any 5-string basses, so if we want to play like drop A, I would just have to play the normal A string instead. But yeah, I think that's still pretty fine, because I mean, that still sounds pretty damn good to me. But now that we have our bass, how do we program it? Well, we're going to pick a pattern. On the left, we can see if we already have a few used ones. In this case, I have not used any patterns, so we're just going to use pattern 1 and place it on the timeline. My first part doesn't have any bass. It's just the clean intro, so I'm just going to put it over here where the second part begins. And I know that my part starts da with an A. And usually I would have to pick the A2, but, well, because I don't have a 5-string bass plugin, I will have to use A3 instead. So now I just repeat whatever the riff is doing. We have da-da, so we just da-da. Okay, that sounds a little bit weird, how it ends just like that, so we're just going to make the notes a little bit longer. And then it goes da-da. So we go down and up. And now you just copy whatever your riff is doing. And when you're done, it should look something like this. And it depends on what you want to do. If you want to, you can just copy whatever your guitar is doing. For example, I also copied the melodies here. But you don't really have to do that. You can just stay on the root note if you want to. But more about that once we're getting into writing, because I will be using my real bass. So let's go. So I know I might have said that you just copy what you're doing on the guitar, but actually there's something that you should absolutely avoid. Actually, there are two things. The first thing is, don't play chords. Even power chords. They might sound cool on their own. So I'm pretty damn cool, not gonna lie. If you want to do like a little bass intro, that's fine, I guess. But if you want to play below your guitar, like in this riff, for example, then you should probably just play the root note and nothing else. The second thing is palm mutes. They don't really work that well on the bass. So I would usually just avoid them, unless you want to play like really tight. And now let's get to how to write. Like I said, you just mirror whatever the guitar is doing. In my example, I just play. But this is where it gets interesting. You technically do not have to play the melodies, like, because you're probably not going to notice that anyway. You probably just want to stay on the root note. You just gotta figure out, do you want to play the melody or not? At the end, the bass is just there to give your song a foundation, the bass, and your guitar is what makes it all interesting and adds all those melodies. And then you have usually a lead guitar or some other lead layer like vocals or a synthesizer or whatever. If you have a really simple part like my intro, you can actually go a little bit crazy and write a new melody for that on your bass. That is actually something I did for a new song of mine. We start with this very clean intro. And then here comes the bass. And now we're back to just playing the root note. But now, let me record and then, yeah, I don't even know where to go from there. Now, looks like I have all my bass parts recorded. Well, this would be a very short video, wouldn't it? Well then, let's throw some more stuff in here. For example, let's mix our bass, because currently our bass sounds mediocre. So let's all put the bass parts on a track. I've already put them on track 3, okay. And yeah, let's throw some effects on our mixer track 3. Okay, so the first thing I will probably do in a bass is get out the equalizer and get rid of some of the mid frequencies. So if I pull this band up right here, this is what those mid frequencies sound like. Kind of boxy, and I don't even know how to describe it. I just don't like them. So if we pull those down a little bit, we get a very dark sounding bass. Now in mixing, we have two main instruments that play the bass, which is, well, the bass and the kick drum. And you don't want them to fight over each other. You don't want them to cancel each other out and stuff like that. So there is a principle where you can either put the bass drum above the bass or below the bass. In my case, I have my bass drum below the bass at around 42 Hertz. That's pretty goddamn low. So I'm gonna make a cutoff at around 50, so that it doesn't that it doesn't fight with the kick drum. I'm gonna pull this a little bit up so we get a little bit of a boost, and hell yeah, this is what we get. Alright, additionally, I see this over here. That's probably just unwanted noise. I can't really hear it, so I probably don't have to get rid of it, but I don't know, it's sticking me in the eye like a needle. So I'm going to make band 7, whatever this is called. And boom, I'm gonna put it right where that thing is. And that should get rid of that weird thing, whatever that is. Now, if you want to sound like Korn, you just pull the high frequencies up. For me, that's a little bit extreme, so I'm going to pull those down. And yeah, that's how far equalizing goes. Oh, one thing I didn't touch on is actually you, of course, need a gate again, because there's going to be unwanted noise. When I stop playing bass, I want everything to just die. Like I said, some people want that distorted bass. I have a really good example here from Shadow of Intent. Hell freaking yeah, that's Blood in the Sands of Time, in case that interests you. In that case, you want some kind of distortion. You can use a pedal, you can use a bass amplifier or whatever. I actually have one that is called BOD by TSE Audio, a bass overdrive, and it sounds pretty damn cool. If I pull the drive all the way up, let's just do it for showcase purposes. Let's pull the low up a little bit because it's bass. Ooh, presence should probably be a little bit higher. And yeah, I guess that's how you get that distorted bass tone. Pretty easy and works super well. Now, here is a really freaking good question. Should you double track bass and put one to the left and one to the right? Honestly, that's one I haven't really figured out myself. Usually when you play guitar, some people actually record 4 times instead of 2 times and put 2 tracks to the left and 2 tracks to the right, because it just sounds more full and cool. But it also will sound a little bit more full. Like, you want bass to be tight usually. So I would recommend only using 1 track and playing that as tight as you can. I actually did like a hybrid back in the day where I used my 8th string. I would play on the normal E string, the riff, and then I would play the riff again, but on the low E string of my 8th string. And I would play those with a bass tone left and right. But then I would record the actual bass and put that one in the center. So the 8th string was just there to like fill in the frequencies that would make it sound big and huge, but the bass would still have its own place in the center. and would give it all the foundation that it needed. Try it out, but I would probably personally recommend just doing a single track. Now, in my opinion, this already sounds pretty damn good. It sounds pretty goddamn distorted, but well, fine. What you can put on there if you want to, that's something that I sometimes do with my bass, is I use the Sound Goodizer by FL Studio. I just use type A and crank it. Warning, this thing is freaking loud, so... Ooh. I just kind of like the way it sounds. It fits into my mixes pretty well. If you like it, put it on. If you don't, throw that shit out the window. Sounds pretty damn thick to me though, so I'm gonna keep it. And yeah, I hope that gives you an insight on how to do a bass tone. My track is full of bass, we have a tone for our bass, and yeah, I guess that kind of concludes this video already. It was a little bit of a shorter one. And yeah, I hope this helped you. I guess I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!